Hi, welcome to the Canon EOS 500D T1i and KissX3 tutorial video 22 part 2. In the previous video we looked at the inbuilt flash, or at least the menus for it. So what I want to cover is some of the fundamentals of flash exposure. Before we go to the next part of the video, or sorry, the next video for video 22, where I'm going to be shooting portraits or head and shoulder shots of a model that I have lined up for that video. So the inbuilt flash, okay, it is a pretty small flash, as you can see, inbuilt into the unit. We had a look at the menus last time. I mentioned also last time that you have a maximum shutter speed that you can use with flash lighting or flash photography, and that is 1/200th of a second. Certainly with this camera. There are cameras that can shoot a higher shutter speed, some only lower. So we're limited to that 1/200th of a second with this. Okay, now the flash in this is fully automatic. It's through Canon's ETTL system, so through the lens metering it sends out a pre-flash and then determines what flash exposure is required based on your camera settings, your aperture, ISO and the distance to the subject. So just to clarify on that, normally for exposure we have shutter speed, aperture and ISO, and that would be for any ambient light situation, be it indoors like in this room at the moment. I mean, it's being lit by a rather warm 500 watt halogen light, or indoors at your home, in a church, an office for example. So you've got your shutter speed, which is the time value that the shutter is open, okay, and exposing the sensor to that light source. You have the window or your aperture, okay, be that a wide open 1.8 on this 50 f1.8 here, or f16, which is a very small hole. The wider open that aperture, the more light gets through. The smaller or the aperture, then the less light gets through, or the smaller that window is. Now your ISO, remember, increases the sensitivity of the camera to any given light, be that light within your ambient location, indoors, outdoors, and or your flash. You could well be using ambient light and flash together, so your ISO will affect both of those. But what actually affects your flash exposure? Okay, we have an automatic flash in this. The larger flashes that you can get for your camera, like the Canon 430EX2, will run in ETTL as well. That's automatic, but it can also run manual. So we can actually set flash power. That is one of the main variables of flash exposure, is the flash power. The camera determines that for us because this is automatic. If we were running manual flash, if we say mounted the 430EX2, put it into manual, then we could choose what power we wanted, be that 1/64th power, quarter power, half power, full power, whatever. Okay, so the only other things really that we need to consider, okay, because we can't really control the output of this other than adding flash exposure compensation, which isn't really telling it to fire at half power. You're just telling it, no, I want one more stop of light or one less stop of light. So the only other elements are your aperture and your ISO. Okay, your aperture, remember, is that opening within the lens. So if it's 1.8, we have at the moment 1.8 on this big wide window, is going to let a ton of light through. And your ISO, okay, will, as we increase it, increases the sensitivity to light as well. One other thing to remember as well is if we move this flash, remember this is the light source, closer to your subject, then it gets brighter. As we move it further away, it will get darker. Now this will actually re-meter and set the flash exposure automatically. If we were running manual flash, then we would have to either increase or decrease the power accordingly. So we have your aperture, ISO, and the distance between the flash or light source to your subject, which determine our flash exposure. Yes, flash power is part of that, but we have no say on what this does flash power wise, other than adding a bit of compensation. Okay, so what I wanted to make sure is, in this video, following on from the last one, is that you understood some of these basics before we go to the next part of the video, which is going to be on location with the 500D and the pop-up flash and the model to shoot a couple of headshots or some portraits. Okay, and what you're going to realise or learn within that next video are what can be done with this and its limitations as well, given its size and its power limit. Obviously you can fit other external flashes onto your camera which have more power, and they also have heads which you can rotate and turn, and you can bounce light, and then you can go nuts and you can go into off-camera lighting. Now for off-camera lighting stuff, I will probably cover a little bit of it for the 500D, but really I'm going to save that for New to Photo. So if you go onto my channel, go down the page, you'll see a link to New to Photo. Click on that link and subscribe there. We also have a second channel for New to Photo called NTP Advanced, which will be covering more of the off-camera lighting stuff, going into running wireless triggers, manual flash, light modifiers, softboxes, umbrellas, grids, you name it. We're going to cover all that stuff for you. But I just want to get you used to this inbuilt flash first, find out what this will do, understand what it's doing when you're using it to take pictures, and that will help dictate what you buy next, be it a bit bigger flash, or if you want to not bother with the ETTL automatic stuff and go manual, then you'll need triggers, modifiers and all that stuff. So thank you very much for watching. If you've got any questions at all, stick them in the comments below. Okay, and I will do my best to answer them before we go to the next part of the video, part 3, which will be on location using the inbuilt flash on the 500D to make some pictures. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.